aspects of music therapy and how that can be implemented into nursing. And so the main result that we found, the benefit of implementing music therapy, is decreased stress levels and decreased cortisol levels. So really, if you can get those stress levels to decrease, you're going to have a lot of benefits. Patients are going to be more relaxed, have less anxiety, they often result with less pain, and really this is a wonderful resource, especially because it's so cost effective. Because really in today's age everyone has a smartphone, everyone can pull up music on the internet, and if pulling up music and simply listening to it can have all these wonderful benefits, I mean it seems absurd that we are not using this in healthcare more, especially when individuals are already spending so much money in healthcare. So any free resource that we have, I mean, it would make sense to utilize it. So that's what we're advocating for with this research here. So we are hoping to get this implemented into eventually getting it implemented into nursing practice. And so getting it incorporated into policies and procedures for different nursing organizations and facilities. So nurses, within our scope of nursing, there are different interventions that you can do to help your patient. So you can help position, you can give them, more pillows, ice chips, I mean things of that nature, almost a comfort measure. And so if music were, for instance, to be kind of within our scope to implement, just have, here's a song selection, or would you like me to turn on your phone for you? Would you like me to play some music? And if we can see those benefits, that would hopefully fall into the nursing scope so we can implement that.
So the research that I decided to conduct was for my senior thesis. I decided to conduct research over STEM in the Bahamas. Growing up, I realized that for the most part, I didn't find out about STEM until 12th grade when my sister went off to school to pursue engineering. And that's when I found out about STEM, and I'm like, well, if I don't know about STEM, a lot of students probably don't. And so that's why I decided to conduct this research. The students, I had 52 participants from public and private institutions. I can't list their name due to IRB standards, but with these students, they were given a questionnaire that consisted of 8 questions, and the questions on the questionnaire was split up into themes of understanding of STEM, the attitudes towards science, the planning of the future, informational interests, academic access, as well as the brain drain. And side note, the brain drain refers to educational, academically acclaimed individuals leaving their home country to go somewhere else for better economic and financial standards. And so that's what's happening in the Bahamas. People who gain their degrees and their education, they stay where they gain their degrees and education. They don't bring that education back home. And so the Bahamas has an educational deficit in a sense. And so that's what I did my research on. And we found that students in the public school did not know what the STEM acronym stood for at all, and that is a big indication right off the bat of what's going on with STEM. Like, if they don't know what the acronym stands for, do they know anything about STEM really? And so we went on to find out that students listed engineers, listed careers like engineering and nursing for STEM careers, and that didn't surprise me. They didn't choose anything outside of the box like forensic science or pathology, and that was because in the Bahamas we don't have a pathology lab, nor do we have a forensic science lab. We send all of our samples off to the United States to be analyzed, and we get our results back to the Bahamas. So that's a lot of money going out of our country and not staying in our country. Beyond that, we contract foreigners to build our hotels and such because we don't have those contractors in the Bahamas. And so that's why I did this research, to bring awareness about the lack of STEM and hopefully bring a change. I want to present this to the government and hopefully take this way further than just a presentation.
The title of my research is Learning Analytics and Dropout Detection, but those things are kind of technical, so the easiest thing I have found to liken it to is YouTube. Have you ever watched YouTube before? Yeah, maybe once or twice. So when you watch YouTube, they have the main video, and besides that they have maybe 8 suggested videos. Have you ever thought about how YouTube decides, out of all the millions of videos it has, which 8 to suggest to you at that moment? If I was going to summarize it, I would say this. YouTube keeps track of everything you do on it. Every video you watch, every video you don't watch, how long you watch it. It keeps track of all of that and puts it together with other data from other people too, which we call big data, runs that through a fancy algorithm, and that calculates which 8 videos you're most likely to watch. And YouTube suggests those to you. Now, why do they suggest those to you? Well, they want you to watch the videos. And why do they want you to watch the videos? Well, so they can show you more advertisements. And why do they want to show you advertisements? So they can make more money. Now, what if, instead of using that big data to pull money out of people's pockets, instead we use it to help learners? And that's what this research is about. It has to do with dropout detection, because what we've done is we've looked at certain variables that may help us predict dropout. Now, we don't have YouTube, but we have something a little bit similar to it, in that in Canvas, everything you do gets logged. Everything you click on, every page you visit, every submission you make, whether it's on time or not, Canvas logs all of that and stores it back of house like YouTube. But unlike YouTube, we don't have a fancy algorithm to figure out the best way to use that data. So that's kind of where we started here, to look at the different variables that may show a difference between the dropout and the people who don't drop out. And we want to figure out how they can help us see the dropout before it will happen. So the long-term goal, like I said, is to build an automatic early warning system so that even before people notice, the system can figure out the person may drop out and we can intervene so they don't. So that's how we want to help them.
I decided to look at rhetorical strategies utilized by female political leaders around the world. The reason I decided to do this was in the United States, masculine and feminine speech have a different connotation, so I wanted to see if that carried over into other countries as well, where a masculine style of speech is typically seen as more powerful. So I wanted to see if other women in other countries felt that they needed to use masculine speech to seem powerful as well. So I analyzed their speeches that were written by, I chose one female political leader, the head of state, and during the 21st century in 5 different continents, the civilized ones excluding North America, and then analyzed it, found that 4 out of the 5 showed more feminine style of speech than masculine, where there was one from Liberia, President Sirleaf, who she did use more of a masculine style. So yeah. So something I found very interesting and would like to study for future research is to take this back to the United States and see how it can be adapted in that way as well. So one of those specifically was I wanted to view approval ratings after these speeches were given to try to see if it actually did increase their credibility, and then do that in the United States as well, and with more women as different, Secretary of State, we've had that before, different leading powers, to kind of apply that and analyze those as well. So,
My project was focused on the effects of brand image on consumer buying preferences, and with this particular project I focused more in on athletic brands. And if you think about Adidas and Nike offer pretty similar products, pretty similar prices, but what separates them from each other is the amount of marketing that they do, the type of marketing that they do, the athletes that they have associated with their products, the teams, and the image that they build around their products, their particular products. And now, if you think about it, it's not just athletes who are with athletic brands. Nike, Adidas, they go out to celebrities such as rappers and music artists, and they create new product lines like Kanye West with Yeezys. Kanye West has nothing to do with athletics. He's a rapper, eccentric individual, but a rapper, an artist. But he created a line of shoes called Yeezys, and they sell for up to $800. And it's nothing exceptional, it's just the image that is created around the product. And so when people see that it's top of the line, it's not really top of the line, but that image that they have, and so that it essentially influences the way they buy their products. Yeah. And I started off with all the secondary research that I did, all the literature that I read, it pointed to that fact. And the primary research that I did, I interviewed people around the library. I walked up to people and asked them a certain questionnaire, and then I sent out a survey to people across campus that they could take, and I put it up online. And so I got the respondents, and it essentially pointed to that fact. So it confirmed my hypothesis. The most interesting thing was, I think, reading the initial secondary research, because I kind of had an idea that it does have an effect, but to see the secondary research, to see there's so many papers out there that point to that, and then for me to actually do the research myself and formulate that question and get answers from it, I think because it solidified what I initially was thinking, that's what interested me the most. And I picked athletics because I've been in tennis my whole life. I've been involved with athletics, and so that's what stood out to me the most. Yeah, because brand image is for consumer buying choices. It's a very broad subject, but I wanted to specify with athletics. That's something I'd have to talk about with my professor, Dr. Joyce, to see if she wants to continue, if we write a whole paper and submit it to a journal to see if that gets in. But yeah, for now, this is what we have, and we're going to go back and discuss and see how we're going to progress with it.
Well, the aim of our study was to find out whether payday loans and the associated debt that comes with them could be avoided by choosing more affordable food sources, such as groceries, and then using those groceries to cook at home. Because we found that fast food and restaurant meals can be up to 5 times and 12 times as expensive as groceries bought at home. And the general payday loan borrowing population only makes about $30,000 a year. So that is a very significant cost factor. And in our analysis, we found that a third of the loan amount that people took out could have been saved if they had cooked at home for a period of 30 days. So if we think about 2 or 3 months of cooking at home, the loan could have been avoided entirely, which I think are some pretty significant results. However, our regression analysis over here shows that there is no statistical correlation between food spending and the loan amount taken out, which means that if people save that amount of money on food, they would not save it. They would spend it on something else, which means that the food spending is actually only one part of the larger spend pattern. Well, I think this has very important implications for financial literacy curriculum to help raise awareness of this price difference and teach maybe budgeting strategies and managing your money for the rest of the month, and also potentially for public policy regarding payday loans. Well, I think that food spending would be the first step, a very important step in discovering the reasons for why people take out payday loans. So if we can run this analysis on different spending categories to just drill down on what causes people to take out these high interest loans in the first place and help them avoid it and avoid that cycle of debt, I think that would be a great service to society.
What I'm trying to do is showcase more of the creativity out of the Research and Creativity Day. So wand making is something that I've done since sophomore year of high school. I went to Universal Studios, and I purchased some Harry Potter wands. And on this one specifically, it's got a little eagle carved on the end. And that level of detail really impressed me. And I know it's manufactured and not necessarily made by a person, but it's something that, since I've really loved Harry Potter, and I've always been a crafty person, I kind of wanted to make my own. So since sophomore year, I made about 100 wands, sold some of them. Kansas City Theater has asked me to make 24 of them for a production that they're doing. I have an Etsy store as well. Each one of them is different. Each one of them is made by me using various tools and little trinkets. So there's some wiring. A lot of them use hot glue for the detail of the handles. This one has some leather wrapping around it to give it a little more grip and some more personality. This one it's a paper clip that's wrapped around both ends to make it a little handle so it doesn't fall off. just to make them all a little personal for the people who have them, you know? Like I said, it's more creative and it's something that I've always been passionate about, and it's something I can make money off of while not necessarily making a living off of it. It's something that I found that it's a lot of fun in my free time, and if it's fun, it's not work. It's just something that I'm very passionate about and I love to do. So, kind of like I said, I do have an Etsy store that I sell them on. I would like to go to the outlet of the Renaissance Festival, something that I've been going to for a couple years now, but I've never been interested in being a vendor until recently when someone told me I could sell them there. And my normal price is $5 for one. It's a 2-day make turnaround, and I think that's pretty good given that no one else out there is making them in this region, so I've got the best prices around. But I think outletting them at a Renaissance Festival would be pretty cool. Wouldn't necessarily want to go on like a huge like website scale because it's not what I want to do with my life, but it's a fun little side project that I can do. So I think, while not necessarily going extremely big, just going a little bit bigger would be my end goal.
My name is Mary Little. I'm a senior nursing student with Emporia State University, and for our leadership topics and for our paper, I chose policy, politics, power, and nursing. So a lot of people don't like politics very much. They're not politically involved. But in nursing, that's one way to make an actual change. It dates back to Florence Nightingale and Lillian Wald, who were both very proactive in the nursing field and in getting it developed in the first place. They went up against a male-dominated society and were still able to make waves and changes for nursing. Currently, there are about 4 million RNs in the United States. At any given time, there's 35 to 40,000 here in Kansas. 1 out of every 45 registered voters is an RN, but in Kansas, only 1 to 2,000 RNs are actually involved in ANA, the American Nursing Association. So for the number of us that there are, that's a really small percentage that are actively involved. Nurses have this really awesome perspective. Like, we see people on their best days and we see people on their worst days and every day in between. So we have that perspective of, you know, this is what society needs, this is what the people need, this is what they need for their health, this is what we need as nurses to be able to take care of them. So being politically involved, whether it's at your community level first or going to the state level or even to the federal level, being politically involved is one way to help make those changes for people. There are no RNs in the Kansas legislature, and there are only 6 RNs out of the 535 members of Congress right now. So, right, for our sheer number, we don't have a lot of representation. And so if we could all get together and actually come together on some issues, especially like with improving the Affordable Care Act, because that's been a big thing right now, pay and safety and nurse-to-patient ratio, on those issues and all approach the political side of things with our strength and our numbers, like, we have that power to make those changes in society. I plan to continue to be involved. I have a job here in town locally already, so I will continue to be involved with my community and helping to promote health for all levels of society. Obviously, the lower income side, if you can barely afford where you live and your food, how are you going to be able to afford prescriptions and preventative medications? So starting there and then working up is probably what I plan on doing. So I haven't decided yet if I'll get involved in a statewide, but definitely local for sure.
My colleagues and I, we are secondary ed majors, and we are going to teach science in either middle school or high school. And in our preparation for that, we took a class with Dr. A for science methods, like how to teach science. And during that class, we were tasked with an assignment where we were tasked with interviewing a science major and a non-science major, and then determining if there's any conceptions or misconceptions of those students about the nature of science. Now, the nature of science, basically the word nature means like the philosophy of science, like what is science, what is the core of what science is. And with current teaching pedagogies, we know that science is a way of knowing. It is a body of knowledge, which people tend to get stuck on. They think that science is simply a collection of facts that we must learn. But science is also a set of methods or processes, which today we know that that that's not necessarily a set scientific method, but that is like a collection of particular research practices that would result in good or bad research. And then these are some other key concepts that explain what the nature of science is. But down to the nuts and bolts, what we were really looking for in our students was the misconceptions or the common misconceptions that we knew to look for. So we were looking for things such as dead words, which dead words would be words like proof on the road, because in science we never prove something, we can only support it. Other words would be like truth or true or right or wrong. Another misconception would be a belief in a particular scientific method, which, like I talked about earlier, is kind of going to the wayside. Also, there are misconceptions about science in that it is strictly procedural and it is not creative. And that's usually persisted by things such as doing cookbook labs or what have you. And then another misconception that we see, especially in younger students, would be that they think that models represent reality because they can't make that connection between the physical world and their abstract thoughts. So I will pass it on to Alex about what we actually found.
Okay, so we interviewed 7 science majors and 7 non-science majors and asked them a set of questions. The questions range from understanding the theories and laws of science and how they're similar and different, the difference between a scientific fact, knowledge, and opinion, and also if science is creative and how it relates to art and how it's different from art. So the misconceptions that were pretty common and big were all found in non-science majors. So the biggest issue I think that non-science majors had were that they didn't understand the difference between a theory and a law, or they had ideas that a theory and law were connected or like totally different from what they were. So they would conclude that a hypothesis becomes a theory, which becomes a law, and that's a misconception because a theory is something that explains and a law is something that defines in mathematical terms what will occur every time based on prior knowledge. So we had some general interview responses. The questions were kind of interesting. Science majors always perform better with misconceptions than non-science majors. This could be due to the ideas that they have because of their classes or being constantly reviewed with them. The nature of science is very heavy in research and development, so the concepts are very applied in their science classes. We didn't ask anything specific to content because we didn't want to overwhelm anyone. This mainly dealt with the philosophy and the ideas surrounding the nature of science. So it did confirm that our hypothesis was correct, that non-science majors struggle more with misconceptions compared to science majors, and we decided that this research can be further developed into something greater because we only interviewed 7 of each group.
So like Alex said, our conclusions were that non-science majors had more misconceptions than science majors did. But what we would want to do for that future research, because this is not a research project, this is just a project that we did in class that inspired us to want to do further research. So what we would like to do is we would like to interview elementary school teachers, and the reason for wanting to do that is because elementary school teachers don't get a lot of science in their learning. They don't really learn how to teach science or the philosophy of science, which this is obviously coming from somewhere, the misconceptions that non-science majors have. As teachers, we want to inspire scientifically literate adults so that they can make conscious decisions, whether that be I saw something online and I don't know if this is right or wrong, or I want to try a new food and I've heard this thing about it, that sort of thing. Another thing we talked about doing was interviewing teachers and interviewing students in the same classroom to kind of see, where these misconceptions might be coming from, see if there's a correlation between what teachers are teaching and what their students are getting from that.
This is Mitchell Peters. He was a famous percussionist. He went to college for percussion and got degrees for that, and then he became a teacher for percussion, and he was a very good teacher. Through his teaching, he decided like good music for like beginning students to learn on, for especially four mallet marimba, where you hold like four, like two in each hand, which is like a very hard skill. Like that's what I'm going to college for. But he ended up composing very famous pieces, and they went like nationwide. And along with those, he wrote a lot of books for like methods for like learning snare and timpani. Yeah, and then he also was in like a lot of symphonies and stuff as well, which got him famous for his playing. And he was in a lot of famous stuff, like here I wrote that he played the timpani for the ABC World News Tonight's opening, and he's very famous. It's quite impressive. A lot of famous bands know him, like the Pearl Jam's drummer uses his method books. It's really cool. Yeah, and he played in he played in Battlestar Galactica, the original theme for that, which is very cool. But yeah, he's a really cool dude. He's a big inspiration to me because I came to college here for percussion, so I'm a percussion major here. His pieces really got me to start learning better than any other composer would have done, because he's the best, in my opinion, for writing like intermediate pieces that get you really up there, you know, to a college level. So I've been playing his stuff for quite a while now.
Yeah, so my subject I had to cover was the Baroque period of music. It's the end of the Renaissance is when it starts. And the three composers that were crucial and quintessential in developing that period of music as a whole, and also the beginnings of opera as the style during that period, which really grew. So what we see is these three composers here, which are Claudio Monteverdi, Henry Purcell, and Antonio Vivaldi. Claudio Monteverdi was the first composer in the Baroque period. He was kind of the musical bridge between the Renaissance style of music and the Baroque style of music. And what he was quintessential in doing was developing the opera style as a whole. Opera was founded in Venice, or Florence, Italy in 1575. And that was when the first opera house actually opened in Venice. And Claudio Monteverdi actually wrote the first several operas for that opera house in Venice, Italy in 1575. So he was very crucial in developing that style and then progressing its popularity as a whole. Now the cool thing about the beginnings of opera is that it mimicked a lot of your Greek tragedies, your Et tu Brutes, stuff like that. And what was really cool about that is that it was very monotone. It wasn't very musically complex yet, because they were very focused on the plot line of the opera as a whole and didn't want anything musically to distract you from the plot line of the opera. And then we get into Henry Purcell, who is kind of our middleman of the Baroque period. He is very important because he was actually the first major composer to set the English language to a musical setting. So he was also the first person to develop the art song in the English language. So he's very crucial in developing the English musical side of things. He actually only lived to be 36 years old. He died in 1695. But before his death then, he became the organist in the Chapel Royale in 1682. He wrote church music, secular music, and taught people of all ages. He actually, his only true opera he did was Dido and Aeneas in 1689. And his music has brought out a lot of dissonances during that time, which is a lot of the crunchy stuff you hear in the background of music that really wasn't that popular with the churches around that time. It was seen as very harsh and possibly not as religiously sound as it could have been. But it was very crucial in developing that style of music during the Baroque period and moving away from the church side of things and getting into the aristocracy. And then finally we have our final person of the Baroque period, Antonio Vivaldi, who wrote one of the most famous classical pieces known, the Four Seasons. It's your da 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 da, which you can kind of hear here. He was very influential on the instrumental side of things, not so much vocal. And he was very famous for his moving melodies and repetitions of melodies just tossed to different parts throughout the orchestra. He was actually so successful with this that he was able to develop 450 different concerto grosses and solo concertos for his orchestras, which is pretty much the most any composer up until this point has done successfully. So the Baroque composers here were very successful successful in establishing that type of music, a lot more dissonances than you saw in your Renaissance era, and that just continued throughout the classical, romantic, and into the modern day music. And they were very instrumental in developing operas. What we do with this information here is we are using it in our music appreciation class right now. A lot of the songs that these composers made very famous, we actually have to recognize as they played them without seeing the title on our tests that we have in that class. And we will use those in our music history classes going forward the next 2 semesters. And then we will also take that knowledge into us when we start our teaching jobs, because it's very important for music teachers to know the famous composers of each time period, their famous pieces, so that way if you're kind of stumped on what piece you want your choir or your orchestra or band to do, you have a few ideas in the back of your head which you can pull from.